let's start with this session. Welcome all. Really nice to see you all. And welcome to this session about feature flags. This is going to be quite a technical session, but it will cover all the concepts you need to know to get started. Who am I? I'm a software engineer at Ordina. So I build software for enterprise customers, and quite a lot of those customers need or could use feature flags. So I will share the information you can use for your customers to help you safely ship features. Let's talk about shipping features. This is how we would like it to go. We build the feature, we merge the feature, we test it, release it in production, and it's fine. This would be nice, but the reality is it doesn't behave this way. If you build stuff, stuff goes wrong. The reality of shipping stuff to production is this. You build it, you merge it, everything looks fine, you test it, it goes into production, and then stuff breaks. People get angry about performance, it doesn't work, it doesn't look good, and people are angry. Now you get angry emails, you get angry calls, you have to fix it as fast as possible. But fixing is quite difficult if you have screaming people, because you are trying to cope that you have screaming people on the other side of the line. It's quite difficult. And you have to go to the entire cycle again. So you find the bug, you fix the bug, and you have to code it, merge request it, test, production, and hope it works. So it takes quite a long time. So this is not optimal. This is how it's done most of the time, but it's not optimal. So we want to look for a solution that solves these issues. We want a less stressful environment if we encounter a production issue. We want to have the time and the space to look into the issue and build a good fix instead of a quick fix. Another issue of not using feature flag is if something breaks, it takes quite some time to fix it. For example, you have to merge request, test it, release it, and it can take like minutes to hours to even release the fix. So that's really a big problem. Another item is the downtime. If you have downtime on releases, you may have unexpectedly more downtime because of a bug fix you have to release. So at the end of the session, I want you to go from this, to be a relaxed capybara in a warm bath, just enjoying shipping features without worrying that everything will be exploding. So that's a nice goal, I think. So let's talk about features. In this talk, I will cover various examples of things that could be shipped behind a feature flag. For example, we have a search bar that will allow users to search for search to the entire site. And we are not sure how this will perform in production. So we ship the entire search bar behind a feature flag. So how would we approach it? The new stuff we build, we put behind a feature flag. We'll look in a second how that looks. Then we create a merge request, test it, release it in production, and then we see performance issues. So we shipped a new search bar, but the performance implications are worse than we thought, and the site became increasingly slow. But because we used the feature flag, you could just disable the flag, and the functionality is now hidden. So you just saw the encircled search bar. It was visible for users, but we toggled the feature flag, and now it's hidden. And now our performance problems are solved. They are no longer present. And the best part is, toggling this feature flag is a matter of seconds. So you just go to the interface where you manage your feature flags, disable the feature flag, all is good. And you become a capybara again. Relax, fix the issue, ship it again. And this is way more nice for your developers because they don't have to quickly fix bugs. They have the time to fix the root cause. So a solution for having production issues is shipping stuff behind feature flags. Let's talk about what is a feature flag. It's basically a toggle a superpower boolean that can be toggled on and off based on specific attributes of the user, or just a simple click of a button. There's not really more than this. It's just a boolean that can be toggled based on attributes like the location of the user, the roles of the user, or any custom logic. And it doesn't have to be redeployed to be active. It can react in real time to certain configuration changes. Then we have the feature flags, but we need to store them somewhere. And that's where a feature flag service comes in. So it's a service that hosts your feature flags. Azure offers such a service. And using the Azure interface, you can create features, toggle them on and off, and configure the target audience. And the target audience is a really important part of feature flags, and we'll cover it in more detail later on. A big part of this functionality is the foundation that Microsoft has built, and that's the feature management library. This is a library built in .NET, and it's a library that manages features. So it can be used to have simple on and off features. It can have features that are active in a specific time slot or based on user attributes. This library is not hardly coupled to Azure. It's a separate library that can be configured to use any source for your features. So it can use your own database as feature management source. It can use files. So this is not a vendor lock-in. It's a generic library that can connect to any feature flag source. And the source, the only thing it has to provide is like a JSON structure. You can see here it's quite a simple structure. It has the features and when it's enabled. And this can be supplied by your custom feature flag source or Azure App Configuration. Azure App Configuration is an implementation of the feature standard, and it allows you to use feature flags with many SDKs, not just as .NET, but any other popular language. The interface is quite simple. It's booleans. So you have the name of your algorithm on the left side, and you have enabled yes or no. Now, why would you need an entire service for that? That will come in later. But this is it in the most simple case. So how do you use it? Now, Microsoft enables you to use feature flags by providing some helpers. These are for Razor and .NET, but you have them in the other languages as well. And what you do, you use the feature tag, and specify the feature flag, and the code you want to feature flag. That's a lot of feature flags. And in this case, if show new search bar is active, then the input will be shown. If show new search bar is off, the input will not be shown. So in the case we just covered, you can quickly turn off and on the search bar. Another use case is the backend. So you have a feature manager service. This is not strictly linked to Azure App Configuration. It works with any source that ships feature flags. And you call isSync is enabled, and it returns a boolean. This boolean can be activated based on time, on attributes of the user, or just simple yes or no. Loading it is quite simple. It provides extension methods to connect to Azure App Configuration and load those feature flags, those JSON documents. With the setup here, like connect and use feature flags, it loads all the feature flags from Azure on startup and determines what's the criteria to enable it or disable it. That's really not that powerful. It works, but we would have to restart our application to apply feature flag changes. But we want real time. If something breaks, we want to log in the portal and quickly disable the feature and stop our worries. So that's why Azure also offers request-based refreshing. So every request that is sent to your application, it checks, has this feature flag changed? And if so, they apply the changes. So that way, if you disable a feature in the portal, it instantly changes your application because certain stuff gets hidden or gets shown. This is cached because every request made to Azure costs money, so you can cache the duration of how long a certain value for feature flag is stored. So let's cover some common use cases. First of all, let's say you have changed something in your application and you want to inform people. Let's say you have a dashboard and you have added a new search functionality or a new reporting service. You can have a banner that is only shown for like the first month. And you feature flag the entire banner. And if the feature has been applied and everyone has used it, you can just disable the banner. You can also target specific users. So let's say you really want to inform all admins that there has been a change. You can target specific users to show this banner. So that's a nice use case. Another one is you can feature flag an item in your navigation. Let's say you have a new dashboard page and you want a certain group of people to test that dashboard page. You can feature flag the dashboard and only enable the page for certain users. So that allows you to A/B test or experimentally ship features. I'm talking about A/B testing. It's also possible to hide certain UI elements or change the flow of a checkout process just based on feature flags. There's a lot of options, and it's quite simple too. So, targeting is the most important part of this all. I mean, just enabling and disabling a boolean isn't that powerful. We want to target our test. So let's say we have a new landing page. We want to target a smaller group at first, so like 10% of our user base, to show this feature. And if they like it, you increase the scope. So you show it to like 50% of the people. And if they like it too, you enlarge the scope. So targeting is really important for feature flags because it allows you to specifically target people. And targeting is possible at various levels. So you can target on user attributes, time windows. You can do it at random, so like a group of people. You can do it based on roles. So if you have a certain user group in your application, you can target only people that have just signed up. So it's quite a versatile way of targeting users. So how does this targeting look like? This is an interface in Azure, and you have input boxes and sliders. So basically you provide at the top the groups you want to target and what percentage. So in this case, all users that are in the group beta users, we want 50% of those people we want to use the feature activated. And by default, we want to target 10% of our entire population. So this interface can be changed at any time, and the application will automatically refresh this configuration. So let's say you have shipped a feature to 10% of your application users, people like it. You can increase the slider to like 50%, test how it works, test how it performs, and then you can ship it to 100%. So this is all in real time, so changing the sliders will have impact on your application. This also solves the problem of production issues. Let's say you shipped something and it really hogs your database. You can just drag the slider back and it will hide the feature for all users. So it's quite powerful too. There's also an option to exclude users. So if you have a really hard to work with user that always complains, you can just exclude them and they will never get any new stuff. That solves all of your complaints. This is the interface, but beneath is just a JSON document. So everything that is configured by the interface can be done by JSON. So this is also prevents like the vendor login. This is just a fancy way of configuring a JSON document. So how does it know the attributes of the user? How does Azure App Configuration know a user is admin, a user it comes from Europe? How does it know it's a beta user? That's all done by the target context accessor. Quite a long name, but it's a powerful concept. And here we have an implementation. I will give you some time to read it. So you implement one method, get context async, and there you provide all information about the current user. So in this case, at the top, we start with like, is the user enrolled by a beta program? So if your application supports beta testing, so you have like an interface for users to check a box, I want to participate in beta tests, then you can perform a call to your database to check, is this a beta user, then add them to the group beta user. All this is arbitrary, so the names and the logic, you all build it yourself. There's no default groups, it's just you decide what stuff is called. Another thing we do here is we add the continent of the current user to groups. So if they come from Europe, we add the group Europe to them. This way we can target specific continents. Or this a use case for this would be if you want to show like a cookie banner, like the million cookie banners you need in Europe, you can only show that really tricky and irritating banner to Europe users without having to hard code it in the application. The last part is we provide a user ID that can also be used in targeting. The user ID is here, so you can allow specific users to have features or exclude certain users. This part only shows the inclusion part. You can also exclude based on groups or on users. So let's talk about the lifecycle. Like you introduce the feature, and your code is now littered with if statements. If feature is enabled, show this. If feature is disabled, show this. So it's quite important to also lifecycle your code or your feature flags to ensure that your code base doesn't become like one massive if statement. So you have to take care of the feature flag lifecycle. And a few important parts of this are: when do you introduce a feature flag? When do you delete it? And how do you delete it? And it can be, this is an example workflow of how you could approach lifecycling those feature flags. So you think, is this a risky feature? Like, I would not recommend feature flagging everything because your code base would be one massive if statements, which is quite hard to follow. So if you think this is risky, if you think like this could have major performance implications, you could introduce a feature flag. So first go to Azure, there you create the feature flag, use any name you want, then add it in code. So the names have to match. It's just strings, so you have to write some code to make sure they are consistent. And then the most important part, configuring your audience. So if you ship a feature, you want to have that feature tested by a specific group. Let's say you have a specific user group that is really involved in your development process, like product owners. You can configure product owners to be your first target group. And if you release to production, they will be the only ones to see it. So this is quite an important step. Then you release into production. So the feature will not be visible to all. It will only be visible to a few users. And those users will test and see, does it have major performance implications? Does this work as expected? And you can gather feedback. So this is quite an important step. You can reach out to people and check, how are you guys liking this feature? Do you think it works as expected? And if stuff goes wrong, so let's say the performance impact is really bad, like your database is spiking or your data isn't really manageable anymore, you can turn down the rollout, so you can roll back to 0%. Your feature will be disabled for all users. So that's a way to quickly fix any issues you have found. That's what you do in monitoring. And so the slider you have seen, you can just slide out to like the percentage you want to roll out. So you start with like a small percentage of like 10%, and you gradually roll out to like 20, 50, 100. And then if all goes well, you remove the feature. The removing part can be quite tricky, because let's say you have like a banner that is visible for like a month. You have to keep track of how long has this code been active and do we still need it. Azure App Configuration doesn't really offer a solution for this. There's no real way to track what features are currently activated and used. So you have to manually go to Azure, check if the rollout rate is 100%, and if it has been rolled out to 100% for like maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, you decide this feature works fine, let's just ship it. So how does sunsetting look like? It's the feature flag we have introduced in one of the first slides. We have a feature that's only shown if the boolean is true. And if you sunset it, we just remove the wrapping part. So we remove feature name, and we just implement it in the code. So you delete it in the code, and then you ship this code. That's the important part, because if you don't ship it and remove it in Azure, it will break. So you ship the code, you place it in production, and then you remove the stuff in Azure. Another part is this is .NET. So you have your feature manager that checks is a feature enabled. And we have tested the beta version of this logic. So this can be, for example, a new algorithm. So you have built a new search algorithm, and you're not sure how it will perform. You can feature flag it, monitor how the algorithm performs, and if it performs well, you can roll out to all the users. And you simply remove the if statements and move the logic to the main methods. So let's have a demo on how it looks. Okay. So in Azure, you have your resource groups, and then you have app config. Then in Azure, app configuration is just another resource, and you can have like any regular other Azure users like web apps. And this is where all the configuration happens. So in the code, you just connect with Azure App Configuration, and you check, is this feature enabled? And all configuration on who should see the feature is done in the portal. This is done in the portal because if you have changed stuff in the code, you have to re-release your code in your application. So all configuration is managed by Azure to allow you to quickly turn booleans on and off, and to really manage it in real time. Keep in mind, this is not a vendor login. Like, the feature management library allows you to use any source, so you could build your own feature management portal that just ships back JSON configuration. So let's have a further look. Those are the feature flags. So you can just create a feature flag. And it's quite simple, really. All it needs is a name, and is it enabled, yes or no. When setting up the name, you can see the key. So if you have many applications, it's smart to prefix your feature flags. So let's say you have a few microservices. You can prefix your feature flags for each microservices with like a key. So like the card microservices. And then you use like the feature flag. So use new algo. And the prefix is used when loading your feature flags. Because if your application starts, you can say only load the feature flags that start with a prefix. And you have to be quite careful with this because you pay for each request. And the more feature flags you have, the more you will pay. So introducing prefixes allows you to specify which feature flags are relevant for your application and only load those. So this is more like a cost management and to keep it easy to manage what feature flag is used for what application. And the feature filter is your audience. So you have built your feature, who should see your feature? So you can just enable a feature filter, and then you end up with, by default, a targeting filter that you can use a few default ones. We have also touched the time window, so you can just activate the feature for like a certain time. So if it's like a Sunday and you don't want to solve bugs, you just enable the feature flag disable site, and it will hide all of your pages and it will be fine. If you have more complex cases, you can enable quite a lot of parameters to tune who should see your feature. And those group names you have added in your targeting context, you can add them here, and you can change the slider on how much of a percentage they should be active for. This interface has changed quite a lot. So this service is stable, but I have worked on this for like maybe 1 or 2 months, and they have changed this interface quite a lot. First, it was only this and a JSON editor. So it's quite a simple service at first, but they're trying to make it more easier for users to actually edit and fine-tune their feature flags. So let's take this one. So I've built a feature flag, use landing page version 2, that shows or hides a new landing page. And that landing page is built in ASP.NET. I've used all my design skills to build this page. It looks quite good, to be honest. And it has Hello World. So that's all you need in practice. And now it shows the regular content. So just the default content that everyone sees. And let's say you log in, and we determine that you're from Europe. This is not another page. This is just a way, let me zoom in at the top. This is a way for the demo to work, because I don't really want to log in, log out, log in, log out. So in reality, you would authenticate the user using your regular login flow. You provide your targeting context with information about the user, like their continent, and then you can use that group, like Europe, to target them. So in this case, we get a new landing page, and let's see why that's the case. We have targeted 100% of Europe and 0% of other users. So let's say Europe, we don't want to support Europe anymore, only complainers. So you apply the change. And if the user refreshes, it's immediately gone. So it took a couple of refreshes because it caches it for like 30 seconds. Because if you send a request to Azure for every page request, it will get expensive really fast. So it has some in-memory caching, so it holds the values for a certain time. And now the people from Europe don't get any new features. But let's say we want to introduce it for all of the people, because we have tested the feature and it works fine. You can just slide here, apply it. And now the feature is active for all users. So this is without ever redeploying your application, without changing any code. You can just fine-tune the sliders in Azure, and it just works. So this is quite powerful to quickly react on production issues or any major issue at all. Let's have another look. So the features here, the feature filters, Microsoft supplies some by default, like the time window or the targeting type, but you can build your own. So in your .NET code, you can build like a browser targeting feature filter. So what, for example, you build a browser detector feature flag, and you can say only show this warning to Internet Explorer users. But that's not provided by default. It's just a feature flag service, and you can build a lot of stuff around it if you want to. Okay. Let's this one. And it has like a flow by default. So it's to determine if a feature is active, it checks a few steps. So at first, it excludes. So if you have a really difficult customer at HR and you want to exclude them from all of this, you can just exclude them and it will never end up in your checks. You can exclude groups. Let's say you have certain people that don't want to participate in any beta testing. You can exclude them and it will never end up enabling the feature for them. And if you're not part of any group or percentage, it will be disabled for you. This is for your session. So if you log in, it will be determined, is it enabled, yes or no, for your session. And then if you log out, it will check again. Work. Nope, didn't like that. Mayor. And let's try that again. Give it some time. Easy. Let's talk about price. This is quite an important part because it can get quite expensive if you don't implement caching. So there's a free tier. You have one app configuration resource. So as I just showed you in Azure, you have 1,000 requests a day. So a request is a check. Has this feature flag of has feature flags been updated? If yes, then it returns the new updated values. Free has no SLA, so it's fine for hobby projects, but not really for production usage. For production usage, use standard. It costs €1 per store, so like each feature flag store can contain a certain amount of feature flags, and it allows you to have multiple per region. And you pay a fixed fee, and for additional requests, like a portion of a cent for every extra 10K request. So this is really important to keep in mind on how often you want to expire the cache. Because how shorter your cache, how faster changes are live. So in the demo, I just toggled the boolean and it was immediately visible to all users. But that's quite expensive because it sends requests for every 30 seconds. So you will hit your limit of 1,000 requests quite fast. So in production, you have to consider how fast do I want to respond to changes, and can I allow myself to have changes like take a minute to apply, because it will save you a lot of requests. And that's it. Any questions? Yes. Okay, so the question is the caching provided by Microsoft, or do you have to manage it yourself? And it's really managed by Microsoft. So I will through the example here. Start. So when connecting, you have feature flags options, and you can set feature flag options cache expiration and time span. So you can say, let's cache it for 10 minutes. That's fine for me. Any other questions?
How does it manage the skill for the users, the amount of users with the features?
Could you repeat?
How does it work when you scale out? How does it determine the 10%?
Yeah. So the question is, how does it know who is part of the percentage, like the 10% of the target audience? So it remembers it in process, so the Azure doesn't keep track. It just stores a JSON document that says, this is the criteria for each feature flag, and the .NET application keeps track of how big of a percentage have been selected. So in your application code, in memory, it keeps track of how much of a percentage has been targeted. So if you restart your application, it will reset like the target audience. So you could be retargeted if you weren't part of the group before. Yes? That's a good question. So let's cover that in Azure. Let's hope I don't break the beamer. No. That's another part in the interface. It's labels. So labels can be used to flag your environment. So if you have like an environment for your development, for your production, you label it the feature flag for production or for test. And if you start the application, you only load development flags or you only load production flags. So labels are the best go-to solution to manage that. Okay. Any other questions? No, it's a good question. There is a default behavior, so disabled it by default, the feature, and it will show you a warning that try to retrieve feature flag named but does not exist. And that's also the case if Azure is offline. It will also fall back. You can configure the fallback actions. So there's quite a lot of configuration to handle certain transient errors or unavailability. So you can configure what happens, and if so everyone should see the feature or no one. Yes. That's like the request. So the question is the 30K request. Does that include caching? So the caching is done in the application itself. So you can, if you disable caching in your application, you will really fast hit the 30K. But if you set the cache duration for really long, you will not make that many requests. So it really depends on how long you set the cache, and that's done in your application. Is that clear? So like the question is, how would you handle auto-scaling with like multiple instances, I think? Yeah. Yeah, so that would involve like a shared, like now it's in memory, but in memory wouldn't work in that scenario, so you would introduce like a third-party caching solution that keeps track of who has retrieved its feature. So like Redis that is hosted as outside of your cluster or your auto-scale group. Yeah, yeah. So in this case, like the library is generic, so you can use any service you want, but Azure provides one for you that automatically scales. Okay. Anyone else? Yes. Yes. Yeah. So the question is, I've shown the feature flags in like a backend scenario. So how do you get those to a SPA or front end? And there are methods in the library which just retrieve all feature flags and their status, and you then make like the front end makes a call to your backend endpoint that returns those are your feature flags with this value. So instead of invoking is enabled async, you expose an endpoint that enumerates the feature flags for that user and assigns a boolean if it's enabled or not. So it's kind of built yourself, but you can use the is enabled in the backend. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, that's it. Thank you.